Welcome to the Golden Belt Buckle Podcast. Thank you very much for joining me. And before we begin, as usual, if you like the content, please like and subscribe. I really appreciate that you trust me with your subscription. And as I said before, every video is someone's first impression of me. So I take every video very seriously. I try to be researched so that we don't sound like a bunch of drunken Irishmen at the bar when we're ranting about our opinions in public. So we're going to talk about Harjinder Singh. We're going to try and reconstruct what he was probably doing in India. We're going to dig a little bit deeper with this story. One of the things that annoys me when I'm reading the news is when I can't get answers, right? They haven't asked the questions that I want to hear about, or they haven't got enough background information. Like, they've got the information, it just hasn't become public yet, right? So then if you got a mind like mine, you're stuck trying to fill the void. And so you end up having to do detective work and try to figure out, what likely was going on, what's true ipso facto, So I'm interested in those kinds of questions. What was influencing him? What context did he come from? To recap, this is kind of connected to the last one, but we're going to take this from the perspective of Harjinder Singh, because his story is hot in the news right now, right? So last time we were here, we talked about Nanjeet Singh, who got into an accident in Manitoba, and then from there we recognized from his age and when the accident happened and from where he was from in Brampton, that he likely was trained in Brampton. And we could tell by the timeline that happened at a time when Brampton was rife with corruption in their trucking schools. CBC blew the lid off the licensing corruption scandal, the bribery, the shenanigans, all the shenanigans. You can watch the video if you want to see that. And then we went and did a deeper dive to look at the context of India itself and the licensing process in India and the corruption, how it pretty much mirrored what was going on in Brampton. And then, kind of concluded that a little bit of that culture was imported into Brampton, along with, hundreds of thousands of East Indians. So that was the last one. So now we're talking about Harjinder Singh. And to set that up, we're going to talk about just the context of India. What was influencing him? What was probably going on in it? Well, what was going on in India, and what was likely influencing what he likely did before he left and made his trek to the United States, which ultimately led to that fateful day in Florida. So when I'm reading about India, it looks to me like in the last 25 years, since pretty much the internet, India in particular, we're talking about Punjabis here, have been awestruck. Punjabis in particular have been awestruck with the thought, young Punjabis, the thought of leaving Punjab. It's almost like there's this subculture that has developed there, and it's almost like one thing leads to another. You get a family member that immigrates, so they look at their TikTok, they look at their Instagram posts, they can see what they're doing in either the United States or Canada or the UK, wherever they immigrated to, and it gives people the fear of missing out, right? They see that, you see all those photographs, right? East Indians love taking photographs of themselves in front of their brand new car. Well, that's the kind of stuff they're looking at, right? So they would see these photographs of their relatives and their friends all over social media, looking like they're living the life, and it would make them want to leave. They would look at their life and they'd say, well, this is kind of crappy, right? Like, there's no opportunities here, right? And then on top of that, there's very famous East Indian musicians, people I don't know, but if you're Punjab, you would know who they are. They've made it by getting out of Punjab and immigrating to Canada or immigrating to the US. One singer, I have his name written down on my phone notes. I don't have it here, but one Punjab singer, one of his lines in his song was, "Anything is possible." Did you hear? Anything is possible in Brampton, right? So, they're singing songs about immigrating, and it just looks like North America is the promised land. Now, I was corrected by someone. I don't think I meant what it came off sounding like, that, a Dalit, that Dalits come over here a lot. Thank you for the clarification, by the way. I can't remember the name of the guy that did it, but in the comments. But I just imagine, I guess this is where I was coming from. I imagine myself living over there. I've got no opportunities, like they say, their education means nothing because there's no jobs. And I'm seeing these, maybe I'm lower on the class scale. And I'm looking at, I can go to a land where my class doesn't matter, where I have the opportunity to use my skills. If I have skills to better myself and become a landowner, and you mean I can do that? Like that kind of message would resonate with me. The internet has given opportunities to people that you would never have dreamed of them having. Like there's so many people that live in countries that are third world. That doesn't mean the individual person in the country doesn't have talent that could be displayed. It just means they haven't had the opportunity a lot of times. And so I can just imagine you get these driven young men and women looking at this, at social media, and they're just like, their heads are filled with these possibilities, which is what they're saying. Now, the article kind of, I think it exaggerates the claim. It makes it sound like every Punjab is just filing out of Punjab province, right? And that's not really true. It's more of a subculture from what I can see, right? Their population, from what I read, is still growing, but there's a large subculture of enterprising young people that want to get out. Young women want to get out because, like one testimony, it's like, I look around my village, the men sit around doing drugs. I want to get out and be someone. Like they want to get in the workforce and use their education that they're getting, right? So their heads are just, they're filled with envy. They're looking around their life and saying, I want a better life. And that, so that is kind of the context that is going on over there right now. Now, many people, once they decide they want to leave, they do it the legal way, right? There's schools that they can go to learn English and pass an English test. So they can become students over in Canada or the United States. They can get a temporary student pass. And they use that as a path to permanent residency. So that's the legal way of doing it. But then there's the other way of doing it, the illegal way. And the illegal way of doing it, there's not only social media influencers, basically selling the North American dream, but there's other social media influencers who are teaching you how to get that dream in an underhanded fashion. Right? They're actually teaching people, and these are people that have already done the trek. They've done the illegal trek. They've got their plane tickets, made it all the way over to South America, made the dangerous trek up through into Texas, and they've done it. And as they're doing it, according to this article, they're posting about it. They're making videos about it. They're basically outing themselves in the United States. Like they live there on asylum, and they're outing themselves on social media by telling everyone how they did it, right? And it's kind of, or they're not even, they just haven't been caught. They never got taken into custody. I think that's actually how it went, because the question was, why would you out yourself, right? If you have asylum status, it doesn't really matter, I guess. But they know, according to this article I was reading, they know that even if someone did try to deport them, they know the law. They know that there are human rights activists that will help them to stay in the country, legally, help them stay. So it's almost like that. Like there is a an intelligentsia teaching people how to immigrate the wrong way, how to immigrate underhandedly, and so when they arrive at the border and they say, "I'm afraid for my life to go back to India," that's all orchestrated. That's them saying what they've been instructed to say. They know that once they say they're afraid for their life, they'll get granted asylum, they'll get out on bond, and then they get a work permit while their asylum case is handled. And they know that the asylum case will take years and years. So they know that they're not going home, right? They play the system. They know the system. And there are online influencers that are teaching people how to do this. Right? Now, this is the thing. Just a thought that occurred to me. People who do things, there's people doing things overtly illegal, but then, like I've shown in my other podcast, the guys that try to do it right, that bought into the dream, say they come over to become truck drivers, and they, in Canada especially, they get probably the U.S. too, but I don't know your laws, but they get set up on the Driver Inc. model, which strips them of all their employee rights, and because they're naive, they get taken advantage of, and that's a whole other story. But it's, if you do it legally, you get screwed. If you do it illegally, I guess you screw other people and you put yourself in danger. So there's those two ways of doing it. Now, what can this tell us about Harjinder Singh, right? I mean, what can we piece together? What can we reverse engineer? What's true ipso facto, right? So we know he's Punjab. He's from Punjab province. He's a Sikh, and it's likely that as he was growing up, he would have seen, because he's 28 now. He was 21 when he got into this 2018, so 21 when he got there. So yeah, growing up, he would have been exposed to all these different influences that we saw. Maybe he had no opportunities over there. He was probably seeing family members posting all of their newfound material purchases online, looking like they're working good jobs, living in good neighborhoods. And Harjinder was probably looking at that saying, I want that too. There's nothing for me here. I'm desperate. I want to get out of here. So it's likely he maybe tried it. Well, not likely. I don't know, right? He could have just said, screw it. Maybe he's just an awful guy. But he may have gone to try and learn the English classes. And now that we know he failed his English test, even after being in the States for seven years, he was probably not good at English. Maybe he failed that. If he did try, he failed, right? So maybe he realized he couldn't come over here as a student. Maybe and so maybe that influenced him to go that illegal way, right? So, and it's likely before he made his trek, there's one of their members of parliament, Sangrel, that's the area. I'm assuming that's like a riding, like I live in Chatham, Kent riding. Simranjit Man. That's his name. He's a politician who gives out letters for a price that will stipulate that, hey, this guy's afraid for his life. He's a Sikh. He's under persecution from what happened back in '84. So you got to let him in on humanitarian grounds. So this guy here, this politician, gives these letters out with instructions to tell people, this is what you say to the Americans when you get there, or the French, or the English. When you get there, the Canadians, tell them you need asylum because you're afraid to go back to India, right? That's the letter. So he would have probably, maybe he would have visited this guy and got that letter, or at least he was advised, if he didn't get a letter, he was advised by these TikTokers. He was probably influenced by these TikTokers and guys on YouTube. There's YouTube, illegal migrants on YouTube that have massive followings teaching people how to get across. So maybe he sat there watching these videos and learned how to do it. But at any rate, he would have been influenced by this culture that we're talking about. This would have been his context, just constantly looking at social media, seeing all these great things, all these dreams everyone's living, but he's sitting there living on nothing with no real opportunity in sight. Excuse me. So that's his context. And then throughout all that, he ended up taking the trek. And sure enough, we know that he gave that standard line when he got apprehended in, was it California, if I'm getting my facts straight. We know that he gave the standard line, I need asylum, right? So that's why I think maybe he talked to that guy or whatever. Maybe he went and got that letter. I don't know. But so this is his context. And of course, we can't forget the big thing. He also brought India's corruption with him. He brought India's awful driving habits with him. We talked about the driver's licenses. Let's apply that here. India, it's been said that by their own politicians, 30% of their driver's licenses are bogus, right? Their version of DMVs or drive test centers, on paper, giving out humanly impossible amounts of licenses in one day. that they were not capable of giving out unless they just printed them up because someone bribed them. This is all documented. I went into the other video. So 6 and 10 Indians haven't even taken a road test. They got their driver's license without even taking a road test. So if he came over with any kind of driving experience, he may not have even had any, right? He may have had a license, but he may have paid for that license. He might not have even tested for that license. He might have just bribed his way to get that license. That's the culture he came from, right? Can't forget that. So along with all the promises of big shiny things, he would have brought this with him as well. A dubious driving record. So yeah, that's pretty much, that's the context he came from. I can't really think of anything else, Then obviously he got into that accident and August 12th, 2025, killed those people doing what you would expect him to do, driving like you would expect him to drive. So anyway, that's the context. That's what I got. That's where my mind is at right now. Hopefully this kind of added to maybe you're thinking about the whole thing. Anyway, till next time, keep the rubber side down. And again, if you like the content, like and subscribe. I really appreciate it. Till next time, take care.